to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Downtown Park Task Force. I'm going to have the members of the task force introduce themselves first, since we don't all have name tags. Maybe none of us have name tags, just so that you all know who we are, and then we'll go from there. Starting at my left.
Sarah Kininger.
Tim Shahorsky, Chair of the Parks and Rec Committee.
Frank Garvin.
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Pat Perush, City Commissioner.
Jay Dunstan, Chair, Downtown Development Authority.
All right, thank you. First of all, we need to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion for their approval?
Motion. Support.
Motion by Mr. Evans, support by Tim. Any discussion, any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, those minutes stand approved. Number 3, City Commission comments. Commissioner DeBuck is running a little bit late. We'll give him an opportunity to speak when he gets here. But in the meantime, Commissioner Douglas, do you have anything to add? I do not either at this point in time. And so we will move on to item number 4. Mr. Rassel is here this evening, and we've all received either through email or through the flash drive that was conveniently provided to many of us, a review of all of the bid proposals that have arrived. We received 5 of them. All of them are extraordinary in their own ways. And so, Mr. Rassel, do you want to make some preliminary comments on the proposals?
Well, the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to just get some direction as far as what you want to do as far as selection process,
Yes.
who you want to bring in for interviews.
Yes.
And maybe come up with some common questions that we can get out to the presenters in advance so that when they do their 25-minute presentation, they know what points you're looking for them to hit.
Sure.
That would be generic. So with that, it's up for your discussion now.
Okay. All right, I'm assuming that all of you have at least received the proposals. I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to go over all of them yet, but that's not necessary as of right now. So I think the next item on our agenda is determination of the selection criteria. How we're going to evaluate these 5 firms and the selection criteria that are going to be at the top of our list for evaluating purposes. Have any of you given some thought to those? I have a short list, at least in my own head, but I will turn it over to the rest of you first to suggest some basic selection criteria for the ultimate candidate.
And we did send you one score sheet that the engineering department uses as a guideline, so you have that available as well.
Yes.
I think the only thing I would love to see is maybe looking at their innovation proposals. I think that this park should have some innovation to it, and I thought a couple of the proposals had some very innovative responses. So looking at ways that they can really push the innovation potentially and make this something that is kind of our standard for future parks.
You mean innovation in terms of the design or the features?
I think
or-
like I saw one had like a mobile app as part of it and ways to like interact with the community. I think innovative approaches to that.
Okay. All right, anything else? Commissioner Douglas?
That's exactly in my notes as well, and I'll expand on that a little bit. When we worked on the Normandy Park, to me that felt like it needed to be a people's park. It needed to be something that responded to the specific desires and needs of the community. We've talked about this park wanting it to be world-class, and while I'm not sure people in Shanghai and London are going to be looking across the pond and coveting our downtown park, I nevertheless support Sarah's idea that we want this to be innovative. We have done extensive community engagement as a build-up to this process, and I thank Nowak and Fraus and LAP for the work that they did. But I do see that several of the proposals, including the one from Nowak and Fraus, talk about extensive community engagement, and to my mind, that's been done. I understand that new bidders will need to do some work just to kind of get up to speed, but I really envision the process, what I'm looking for here is, I'm looking for firms to come in, review our existing community engagement, and show us designs, innovative designs. I mean, I'm looking for stuff that we haven't seen before, and none of us are park designers. They are the experts, and they're the people who should be bringing us the cutting edge, the innovative ideas that we want, that most of us, can't even imagine. So I'm definitely looking for that, and that's gonna be a high factor in my ratings. I'll say parenthetically, I read these proposals and I can never figure out what different team members are doing.
Yes.
They put together like a coalition of 2 or 3 or 4 professional companies. I get the engineers, I mean, I know who's doing soil testing and borings and elevations and so on and so forth, but other than that, I'm looking for these firms to come in and tell us why they have these different members on their team and what they bring to the table.
I think another thing I was looking at is I appreciate as much as we asked for the community engagement, I really wanted to translate that into communication with the community on an ongoing basis of like where we are with the park, being able to have an innovative approach to that communication and multi-tiered approach to communication throughout the project. I feel like just going out and getting some ideas from the group isn't going to be enough. I want them to really be going out and proactively showing them the designs, getting their soliciting their expertise and things like that, and then how are we communicating deadlines and those types of things throughout the entire process, so that it doesn't necessarily, not that we won't be involved in that, but being able to be kind of that face of the park and really being able to answer a lot of those questions proactively in a multi-tiered approach.
That makes a lot of sense, especially since it's gonna be, there's so much activity going on
Right.
down here. It's gonna tend to get lost amongst everything else.
Exactly.
Unless we really push the information out there on a regular basis.
Right, and I saw some of them were much more proactive in like websites and mailers and things like that. So I think a multi-tiered approach to make sure we're reaching all the community and not just one different, like one single focus.
Anything else?
And one other thing.
Yeah, go ahead, right ahead.
All of these proposals, if anybody who's read them sees that it's hard to differentiate between parks that have actually been built
Yes.
and parks that they've just designed. I'm interested in the parks that they've actually built. So, Mr. Rassel, as you communicate with them and as they plan their presentations, bring us reality.
And I think it would be interesting to see reality in similar size space.
Right.
Because like some of these are like 25 acres or whatever, like significantly larger. So being able to see what they can do in the space that this park will be. So very realistic, I guess. Other incidents for me would be important. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on the rest of the task force.
Well, I would agree, because it was hard to figure out what was the concept and what was actually something that had been put together.
I do love their pictures, though.
Yeah,
I found myself
certainly.
very fascinated by the pictures.
I think that adding innovation is a great idea. I actually went through each of these twice. And
good for
I
you.
actually used the scorecard just practicing. I know this isn't the official card yet, but a couple things on the card, understanding of the work scope, the project schedule. I kind of found that to be kind of the same all the way across the line for everybody, and I didn't know. So I gave everyone the max score for that, and then at the end, public engagement plan, proposed methodology, that was all pretty, to me, as I went through all 5, was pretty vanilla, or similar to what you had gone through with Normandy and what we've already kind of gone through in this case. So I like this scorecard. Those are just a couple things. I don't know if they need to be there, but I think the innovation's a huge one, and it should probably carry a lot of weight.
I think in our request, we also talked a lot about sustainability. I don't know if we want to, if that would be part of the initial scorecard, but I know that we had a huge emphasis on sustainability as a criteria.
I think that's an important part of the design process. I mean, you
Okay.
want a design that is not only going to, as from a design perspective, stand the test of time, but also continue to be functional. I mean, you don't want elements in it that after, 5 years, something is going to break down and it's not going to be functional, and all of a sudden, the key element in the park is just going to be sitting there. So sustainability, I think, is an important aspect of it.
You mean like the fountain at Hart Plaza in Detroit?
Which I have played in myself, so I appreciate that.
On top of all those things, which make a lot of sense, I think it would be interesting to hear how they would make this park unique to Royal Oak and how it would be anchored here in the history of this place as opposed to just something that could be anywhere.
Agreed.
So I'd like to hear them talk about that when they come.
I think it would also be interesting if they could somehow not only make it unique to Royal Oak, but because this is an older part of the community, somehow reflect the history. And they only have 2.5 acres, so it's not like they're gonna be, putting up monuments and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, not everything around us is gonna be contemporary. It's gonna remain in its, 1910, 1920 architectural form. So I guess I would like to see that just acknowledged, not necessarily be a complete architectural feature of the park.
Well, I think they might have unique ideas about how to bring in history into the community, into the park, and so I'd like to hear how they think about design relative to history and also ingenuity. So I think it would be important if their design lead were here so that we could, and that would be one thing that would be really important. I would like to know who the design lead is from each firm, and I would like them to be here so that we could hear that person talk.
There were definitely a couple I didn't feel like had spent the time looking through the engagement survey results that we had seen, like based on their kind of conversation. Like one I feel like relied on it incredibly heavily, the one obviously who did it. But some of them I feel like need to do some research into what was all the community engagement that's already been provided. So that would be some feedback I would want to give them, like they need to spend some time really going through those results. I know you're shocked, Tim, that I read these. I didn't just look at all the pictures.
All the pictures.
I actually read the text.
Occasionally.
Any other thoughts? The one thing that I noted as going through them is it was difficult, as one of you alluded to tell, especially the ones that had multiple entities on their team, so
Yeah.
to speak, especially when it came down to the cost breakdown as to how much of that actual cost and work was going to be assigned and delegated to the individual people. There was one that had 4 or 5 different firms on its team, but there was no indication as to how much of the pie, of the slices of the pie in terms of the overall cost, each individual firm was going to be not only responsible for, but also benefiting from in terms of paid invoices and so on. So I would like some clarity in that regard as to, in terms of the cost breakdown, who really is going to be paid and who really is going to be doing the work on all of these firms, so that we get a sense of who is actually developing a working team and who is just maybe padding it a little bit with other names and individuals that are not really going to be too involved with the project. I'm not so sure that that's necessarily going to be the case, but I just want to be sure that, we understand how the cost breakdown amongst all those firms is going to occur.
I have a question for Greg. Was construction administration part of their proposal? Like, did they need to be handling that, or I couldn't understand from the RFP document that we sent out to them, so I apologize. Maybe I missed that.
Supposed to be part of their
Okay.
fee. There were 2 firms that listed
Included
it
it.
as an option.
Okay.
And it was not included in their base bid.
Okay.
Same thing when it came to water feature design.
Say there was a couple that
There
didn't
was
have that.
one firm that included it. Another firm referenced that if we got heavy into water feature design, that there would be additional costs. There were 3 others that did not reference the work that would be necessary depending on how extensive we got with a water feature in the park.
Okay.
Greg, I don't want to give you more work, but would you be providing a breakdown or comparison between all the firms as to whether they have all of the items that they're supposed to have
Well, that
in
was
their proposal?
one of my questions, is to make sure that when they do the presentation, they go over all the deliverables so that we know what we're expecting.
I would agree with that, and I feel like,
That's the one question I have when whoever comes to do a presentation, to go over each stage and say what's included in their base price and what's viewed as additional.
Okay.
Okay.
I noticed a couple had a lot of travel fees, which was interesting to me.
There's always some travel for some special thing. Some
They might have
lose
firms that
money.
are out of town.
Yeah, they did. I think their
And-
water fountain people were out of town.
Yeah, and a lot of these people, even just coming from West Michigan, there's a travel cost.
Commissioner Douglas?
So, can we agree, or when it comes to evaluating the engineering components of it and checking off all of the engineering things that need to happen, the soil testing, all that stuff, is it relevant to our decision-making? Or can the staff just check off the boxes that say, yep, all of these people have covered the engineering bases, the testing bases and so forth, and then just let us know if there are any that don't? Because it looked like they all did, but I don't know from.
We can do a review of that, but I think there are some things that were common to all of them.
Right.
I think the biggest difference is understanding the scope of work on the final design.
Right.
What features we want. You know, it's sort of like, I think I think all 5 presenters have an idea what the cost is to design. But I mean, as we sometimes do in Royal Oak, if we move the goalpost, the costs are gonna go up.
Same,
Well, I mean, the example is the water feature. There was one firm included it, one firm referenced it as a reference, 3 others did not include it at all. So if the water feature becomes a big thing for us, you know, somebody that you thought was at price A is now gotta, no, that's beyond the scope of work of what we bid in the initial contract. That's a change order.
so water
because-
feature design, obviously not the
Right.
cost of the feature
Right,
itself.
right.
Are there other items other than just a water feature that might trigger that kind of a concern?
Not that I recall.
Do they have architecture for a band shell, for instance? All of them do?
No, that's another feature. See, so there, some of them did, some of them did not, and that's the reason. Now, once again, you may be happy with just doing the change orders and doing that because, you know, as we go through the design process, we may determine we don't need a band shell.
Right, exactly,
So
yeah.
why have them give you a price on providing a band shell architect if you're not building a band shell? Because it just inflates their cost in their bid, and it may be one of those things that you rule somebody out
Right?
for,
One-
just for
yeah.
having a capability. It's like having features on a car that you never use.
One of the challenges is always the catch-22 when you ask for a RFP and then the design scope is not totally defined. You know, we're not asking them for, we know we want this, we know we want that, and therefore give us a price to do that. So the problem is once you get hooked up with a particular design firm and then you decide you want a water feature, then you have to say, you're pretty much fixed to them for doing that water feature, and so the cost of their fees for that water feature don't have a lot of inhibitions, you know? So, so that's it's gonna be tricky to do that, I think, unless there's a possibility of sort of subbing out the work or bidding out that work for the water feature to several water feature design consultants. And I think that would be the way to go, actually. That would be a way of at least justifying the cost of the design firm for that, so that you'd have multiple bids to design the water feature from that particular firm. They would sort of sub out the design for that, something like, or sub out the design for the band shell, if there is a band shell.
And once again, we did not, you know, one firm had pretty complete, and they had all the features in there, you know, band shell, water thing, but.
Right.
But I mean, once again, we may not determine those things, but we're gonna sign a contract that says they have to provide it,
Right.
so it's one of those things.
We don't know how big
We
that
don't
water
have
feature
it,
is or how big the
so
band
we
shell is.
want it sort of like more à la carte than
Right.
the way we did the bid.
I think one thing I would be interested in, just from your perspective, Greg, is understanding from a testing and that kind of stuff, are they all fairly equal? Like, they're doing the similar things, and that seems to be covering what the city needs?
But the engineering part is pretty standard. A couple of them had the same subcontractors for
Yeah.
testing
Okay.
and materials.
Like, I feel like I'm
There's-
not very
there's-
qualified.
There's only a couple of firms in the area that do that kind of work, so.
So like, from that perspective, we pretty much are like at a flat line. So we're really evaluating the innovation and the creativity and the communication and the engagement. So I just want to make sure we're level set, because I don't have any clue. Like, they say a lot of testing, and I'm like, like, I don't know what's needed and what's not needed.
Yeah.
Personally, I've never been involved with park design before.
When we're dealing with Normandy Oaks, we would have been dealing with the same catch-22 issues that Frank is describing here, because I believe we picked the design, did we pick the design consultant before the actual design was finalized and the actual features were developed?
Yes, we did.
So are you dealing with that in a series of change orders, or are you, how are you handling that particular issue in terms of Normandy Oaks as a template for?
Well, they designed, we approved the design, and based on the design, then they went out to bid for construction.
Okay,
Once again, I think what's here is that people put a lot of expertise into this park, because this is a little more unique than Normandy Oaks. Normandy Oaks is gonna be a great park, but the vast majority of it is open space. Whereas most of this is gonna be integrated space.
right.
So there's a lot of work that has to be done with matching up, and there's some features down here that either need to be taken into consideration as far as relocation or worked around in their present location so that they're integrated into the park.
Okay. And then, is our engineering department reviewing these proposals as well?
They were provided a flash drive. I provided the flash drive to several members of staff, and I have not gotten any feedback from them as of yet.
Okay,
But you will.
I hope so.
okay. All right, any other questions for Mr. Rassel right at the moment, or
No, thank you. Thanks, Greg.
any other criteria that you want him to include in his communications with the people making the proposals in terms of other items that they should focus on or highlight, or?
So it seems like we want to kind of parse out, like, base design, and then, to your point, have the à la carte option, like, what's it gonna cost for a water feature, what's it gonna cost for other additional features? Is that what we'd want to hear? From the couple that provided it, it seems like we'd want to understand what we're spending in the design for that water feature or that band feature. Is that what I'm hearing,
Yeah, I
Frank?
would think so, yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure we understand, so everybody's being evaluated at that flat line kind of basic design.
So at some point, the firm we pick will say, okay, here's our plan, and here's an empty spot for a band shell. Band shell design is gonna be $25,000.
Right. So
Water
then we
feature is gonna be X.
yeah.
Okay,
I feel like that would at least put them all in an even playing field, because I mean, one was significantly more than
Right.
the others, and I think they included all those elements based on the community engagement feedback versus the others who didn't. So I'm not sure we're comparing apples to apples in that space.
It would be good to hear them explain how they're going to handle that.
Sure,
That issue.
absolutely.
But I will just say that, you know, when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yep.
Right.
When your proposal includes a $500,000 water feature, you're pretty much gonna get a $500,000 water feature.
Right.
Right.
A water feature we may or may, at the end of the day, may or may decide we don't want.
Yeah.
I think
that
we do, but
objectively-
yeah.
Yeah, but then the size and scope of it is,
Exactly.
yeah.
any other criteria? We can always, if you think of anything, of course, later, you can always send Mr. Rassel and the rest of us an email. But we've got a pretty comprehensive list, I think, right here.
Agreed.
Of additional things that we would like to hear from these individuals, or these groups.
Yeah, and good consensus, I think.
Yeah, I think so
Agreed.
too. Okay, given that, we've gone through the selection criteria. Now we need to decide how we're going to handle the actual interview process. Are we going to want to hear from all 5 of these? Are we going to narrow it down at some point? obviously, you're gonna wanna do in-person interviews, you're gonna want to have them do a presentation. Do you want to cram however many we pick all into one night? Do you wanna spread it out over a couple of nights? That whole scenario is open to discussion, because clearly we don't have a deadline. It's not like we have to decide by next month. So we've got a little bit of wiggle room in terms of time. But on the other hand, we are trying to coordinate with other construction activities in this area. And some of that has to be done as part of the design process, so we can't dawdle, let's put it that way. So I guess I'm open to suggestions as to how you would like to handle the whole interview process and selection process.
Will the interview process be a public forum like this?
Yes.
Yes. Would it have to be here?
It's just a matter of scheduling. It doesn't have to be here. We could do it at the community center on Murray. But this time of year, programming
Yeah, programming there is ramping up this time of
ramping
year.
up, yeah. I
Okay,
mean, it limits our dates.
okay, all right, okay, thanks.
I feel really pressed to make a decision of eliminating any tonight without hearing from them. I guess I'm gonna be honest. Like, I haven't spent enough time, first and foremost, I have not spent enough time reading them to be able to say, like, I don't wanna hear from these two to narrow it down. That's my opinion, at least. Not that I want us to sit through 5, I appreciate that's a huge investment on our part. But I'm not at that point to say that I can differentiate without hearing from them at least once. At least,
Yeah, I
agree with
didn't
that.
rank them.
Yeah, I don't feel that I looked at any of these and said, okay, 1 through 4 are great and number 5 was awful. I mean, I think it would be beneficial to hear from, I mean, there were only 5 that submitted these proposals, so
Right.
maybe even just give them the courtesy of hearing their presentations.
How much time do you think each proposal would take?
What was the Normandy Oaks experience? You
We
had,
gave them, I think we gave them 15, 20 minutes, and then there were questions from the task force afterwards. But I'd have to go back and look. I think we interviewed 4. We may have interviewed 4.
There was 4.
Okay.
An hour apiece?
We knocked it all out.
I don't mean a presentation, I mean the total time they talk and answer questions. Less than an hour?
It was less than an hour.
Half hour each.
It was at least a half hour apiece. So to do 5, it's a full evening. It's a full evening when you can count transition time and all that stuff as well.
okay, so I think the consensus is at least initially we want to hear from all 5. So the question is how much time do you want to allocate for each? And then that will determine, I think, whether or not we want to do one long marathon session or whether we want to break it up into perhaps 2 sessions.
I think for the public, we should do it all in one.
yeah, I was gonna recommend, I mean,
You
it's
know?
painful, but I think being able to compare them all back to back to back, I feel like would benefit, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm at that age where I might forget from one Monday to the next, or whatever day we have it. I'm at that stage in my life.
Most of us are at that stage.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna own mine, I'm gonna own my stage in life, and I appreciate that. I feel like I would have a better consensus of being able to evaluate them in that moment, without having to try to remember what these 2 said versus these 3 one night.
The other issue as well is that if we were to break it down into like 3 and 2, would we be giving the 2 an advantage because
Right.
they will have seen the 3 and could go
That's
back and
true.
tweak?
Yeah,
And that's probably not fair to allow
Yeah,
that
agreed.
possibility to happen.
that's a great point.
Not that they necessarily would do that, but
Yes.
just
I
eliminate.
would.
Okay, then.
There will be, we'll do random draws as far as order or based on
Order.
your schedule, but there will be people asking to go first and last.
Sure.
But I think if you put them all in one night, then they have less ability to be able to change their messaging.
Right.
To your point, granted, I appreciate you're gonna randomly select them, Greg, but
Right.
I mean, Greg, did you think that time frame was enough for Normandy Oaks? We say 20 minutes of presentation?
I thought it was, because you want people to get to the point,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
kind of stuff, and I mean, we weren't holding it, if somebody went 22 minutes, we, you know,
You didn't have your timer out, Greg?
I did not have my timer. So,
Mike had a timer out, actually.
but you can tell when it's,
Yeah.
when it becomes conversational, or you'll figure, you guys will figure it out easily.
We'll
right?
figure it out.
So,
And they've provided us, at least initially, with a ton of information in a written form anyway, so it's not
Yes.
as if they're gonna have to start from scratch when they start
No.
their presentation. We will have had all of that background information, hopefully, and we will have digested it by that point. So when we go through the presentation, we will at least have our questions kind of narrowed down a little bit.
Yep, agreed.
How much time then do you wanna allocate, just like a half an hour for each one?
I think that includes Q&A.
Yeah.
so we'll do
30 minutes total Q&A,
20-minute presentation,
10 minutes Q&A.
10 minutes Q&A.
I agree.
If it goes along, you know, we're not
That
gonna.
holds us accountable to keeping the questions concise as well. And maybe what we can do is, as we review these, we can share our questions with each other that we would have, if we have some in advance, just so we can consolidate our questions. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll take the information you gave
Yeah.
tonight, and I will run that by you to make sure I heard, interpreted correctly.
Okay.
Okay.
So the questions, the points that you want to make sure they cover in the presentation, make sure I interpreted that correctly, and then we'll get that information out to them as well.
Okay. Or is everybody comfortable with that potential schedule? All in one night? Can we start, I mean, obviously, this meeting started at 6:30. Would it be helpful to start it earlier than that, like at 6? Or is this a good time? A little bit later? How about the timing?
Earlier is fine.
6 would be good.
We can do 6.
6?
Well,
6,
That works for us.
okay. That way we're all not here at 10 o'clock.
Have your coffee.
Yes, or whatever.
PM.
This is gonna be very exciting.
Exactly, still PM.
And you will have all the audio-visual stuff that we necessarily would need for,
Yes, well, if, do you want us to try and do it at Hooray, or do you want to do it here?
it's up to you guys.
Technically, would it be easier for you to do it here?
Yes, technology's better here.
Yes, we would have the screens and all of that, so people in the audience would be able to see the screens. And that technology is not available at,
No, it's not.
right, or anywhere
Not
else.
easily.
No. Okay, then we'll do it here.
Okay.
Okay.
And you'll send us the date? Once you get it
Send
scanned?
us a date.
Okay.
I do the first and third Mondays work, since I know 3 of you block out Mondays for your lives anyway.
Mondays are good.
Monday's a better day? Okay, so we'll
Absolutely.
shoot for a Monday. Okay.
And Easter is coming up, so.
I will make sure it's not Easter Monday.
Not Easter Monday.
Not Easter
You
Monday.
know, I think we have a commission on Easter Monday. I think.
Sure?
Yeah,
Oh,
Melanie.
then
can-
I won't be that night anyway.
No, it won't be that night anyway.
So I'll take that into consideration. I will definitely take Easter Monday.
Sure. Okay. Any other time, date, suggestions, concerns? Okay, we will plow forward then. Any other information you need from us, Mr. Rassel, about time and scheduling and any kind of
I
stuff
don't
like
think,
that?
I mean, it's, as you said, we do have a little bit of time, other than, I know that they want to move forward because there's some integration that they would like to talk to the designer about, to make sure that decisions made elsewhere outside of us are coalesce with the thoughts of the designer.
Okay,
So, but we're not married to a hard time schedule.
okay. Sounds good, thanks. Okay, that was all that I had on my list in terms of decisions that we had to make tonight. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we move on to the next phase, which is the interviews of all of these individuals? No other items? Okay, then I'm going to open this up to public comment. I don't know if there's any people here who have comments. Yes, Mr. Gomez, I see you back there.
Evening, George Gomez, 2018 Guthrie Avenue, Royal Oak. The one thing that crossed my mind in talking with a few individuals in all of the sessions I sat through, and I haven't read all of your minutes, so I apologize if you've already discussed this, was the question of, as we sell all the properties around here that are of any large nature, one of them that's been on the block for a long time is 6th and Main Street. So if that goes away during Arts Beats and Eats, we take away the only venue that I'm aware of downtown that would work well to put on the kind of concert venue that we've done in the past with Arts Beats and Eats. And as we go into this design, it really wasn't brought up at any of the sessions I sat through. Everybody was worried about, you know, utilitarian use for office people and other people. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration. Unless we're going to move Arts Beats and Eats concert venue out to Normandy Oaks, it's about the last large property that could, you know, hold that kind of venue. And that is really an exceptional event at that time to have a known artist up there, and very valuable, I think, to the downtown and keeping Arts Beats and Eats. So I asked of you, if you haven't considered it already, that in this design, even though we want to be creative and fancy and water and all these other things, that we really do have to consider that venue. It will be the last that I'm aware of that we can really use. As we take up some of the space at Farmers Market, it's not as if we can even move it over there. So I do appreciate your time, and I hope that you'll consider that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who is next? Right here, I saw a hand.
Good evening, I'm Michael Lawrence. I'm at 761 East 4th Street and the president of Grant Park Town Lofts. And just a couple comments initially on the process. So I've been a part of the community events that we had at the school. And when I read through the proposals, my initial take on it was that they're feel-good proposals. It's a beauty contest, but what are we really measuring? Right? What are the, I took it as more of an RFI, where they're basically telling you what they're thinking about and what their capabilities are with their business partners. But typically you would design the park and then you would put it out for bid to have all the components of that park built. So I was surprised that we were thinking we'd pick a vendor to do this work without having firm requirements for the park. So as I start thinking about it, I thought, is this a passive park or an active park? And my guess is we want it to be an active park, right, where things will go on and so on. And a couple of thoughts in that area is, have we talked or thought about public-private sponsorship and how events would be paid for, so that the city doesn't have to incur all of the quote-unquote maintenance costs associated with events. The other thing, and even in the discussions that we had at the school, was the ongoing cost of maintenance and how much of a burden that'll be on the city. And so when we talk about sustainability, it's also, you know, what's the cost of the city annually to maintain and keep the park clean and so on. And I think that should be a big consideration, because I've seen too many government projects where we get the initial funding to build the facility, and then we can't find the maintenance dollars to keep it the gem that it needs to be. And we sure don't want the neighborhoods thinking that we're keeping that the first-class park that we hope it'll be, at the expense of the other parks in the city. The other thing is, I read through the proposals. Some of them were using lots of different subs, and my concern with too many subs is that somebody has to manage them, has to manage the time, and as you said, you know, who's providing what expertise at what period of time in the construction, and time is money. So if you're not getting a crisp build, it's going to cost you money. Now, having been on the proposal side of many proposals, I think that 15, 20 minutes for the proposing companies is not adequate. And I'm thinking from their standpoint, all of them put a lot of time and effort into putting these proposals together. And to give them 15 minutes just doesn't seem like enough time. Some of them can probably do it in 15 minutes, but are they really gonna communicate to you the value that they're bringing with their solution and the partnerships that they've put together to provide?
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
I'm all done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Wolf, you have 3 minutes.
I just want to give you this couple of photos of Washington Square. Washington Square is one of 1,900 New York City parks, and it's one of its most traveled, probably of its, in the top 2 or 3 of its most popular parks. The other thing is, my idea is to take advantage of the LED technology. It's the new technology. I was talking with Bob Ford. He has found a company out of Vegas that specializes in lighting. And if you know, Vegas really knows about lighting. They know how to save money. So I'm going to read this quickly. Royal Oak's future downtown Central Park with a farmer's market, double-wide sidewalks on West Troy and West 3rd and South 3rd, added to hopefully someday an expanded library/community center, a unique playground, and most importantly, a new rainbow-lit central fountain attraction, plus the Star Dream, can all be combined to provide not only a meeting place, but also an art and cultural center for the city. And it occurred to me, when you go to a birthday party, what's the center of attraction? The birthday cake. It's very colorful, has candles and everything. You put a nice colorful LED lit fountain, and every time you turn it on, it says, "Happy Birthday, Royal Oak." It is stated on our city's official website, by the way, that the decisions of the DDA affect not only the downtown, but the entire city, and I would like to see more input from the DDA and ideas to fund this park, to make it the best it can be in both the CBD and the entire city and its economy. Also, possibly the DDA can contribute to its maintenance, so that way jealous residents don't complain. Royal Oak has so far spent a great deal of money and time deciding on which company to explore it, what it wants and needs to make this small park shine, which is why it chose Nowak and Fraus, who has an excellent record. Being this park is only about 2 acres, it is not as important who comes in with the lowest bid, but more importantly, it's important which company can give our city the most bang for its buck. Nowak and Fraus also has excellent record of not exceeding its proposed bids. It was decided after several input sessions that a water attraction is important. A cold cooling fountain provides a natural rainbows during the day, and now the latest inexpensive to run LED technology, rainbow of colors in the early evening and on cloudy days would be a great idea, especially during the longer spring, summer, and early autumn. The fountain can be a centerpiece for concerts, the flower show, and so many inexpensive events that attract people. Do not forget that people attract more people, and this is what our downtown needs, and not just on Friday and Saturday nights. I can see this fountain placed in line with the library steps, which also provides a natural amphitheater, complete with existing electric outlets and available bathrooms. You don't need another amphitheater. Regretfully, the Veterans Memorial must be moved to another location, but not far away, as it can remain in the park surrounded by trees and landscaping. Add that in front of the library during the winter, a temporary ice skating rink can be installed, as was done on the east corner of 3rd and Troy for a couple of seasons. Bob Ford, who is tremendously knowledgeable and a landscape architect in his own right, agrees with me. And do not forget, a little money should not be the first consideration, as we are talking about the next 100 years. I am hoping that the city comes up with a 501c to enable tax-exempt conservancy to support the park.
Mr. Wolf,
Okay?
can you wrap it up, please? We've got your
All
written
right.
statement.
Okay, well, okay. I hope, again, the Billy Johnson Park, please Google Billy Johnson Playground, New York City, also the New York City Conservancy. You'll learn something. And this park, by the way, I hope if it's done the way I would like to see it, and and if anyone would like to remain, I will stay here and show you this to give you a better idea. This park could say, this is the place you want to live and you want to set up a business.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Is there anyone else here this evening? One last chance. Of course, there's not very many people there. All right, we'll wrap up this portion of the meeting. Thank you all for coming this evening. Please stay engaged. This is going to be an exciting process, an arduous process. This is going to be a complicated thing, but we're all looking for a really good outcome. Anything further for this group this evening?
Well, I was gonna ask Mr. Dunstan to tell us about the DDA's commitment to funding this park.
The DDA's committed $5 million.
Thank you, DDA.
And you are paying that in monthly, or not monthly, yearly, annual?
Well, that's, I believe it's coming out of the bond, but that number is actually a number that came from the city commission, because that was actually on a pro forma that was presented to us, that the city commission put together, and we agreed to,
That's right.
in principle, as part of the bond agreement. So,
Okay, so the DDA commitment is there with dollars.
Thank you.
Anything further this evening?
No.
All right, with nothing further, then we are adjourned.
All right.
Fastest
Thank you all
meeting
for
in
coming.
history.